As Westerners, we don't usually truly understand what it means to suffer for our faith. Sure, we might have lost a friendship, or we might have had some awkward situation, or somebody may have said something offhanded to us, but we truly don't see like what's happening overseas. This article is brought to us by ICommitToPray.com. It's about a family in Nepal. Anu and Parkesh, who are the mother and father in this family, were ultimately brought to Christ through a miraculous healing. Their daughter had an illness, and long story short, the daughter, through the power of prayer and belief, was healed. The father, Parkesh, had some other mental illness issues that led him to be violent. He was healed too through prayer. This caused Anu to leave the occult, and her and Parkesh to become believers. Well, ultimately, Parkesh's family found out and kicked them out of their home because they converted to Christianity. They're temporarily living in the church and they want to build a small house, but they got baptized in August. So this is a great story that shows us the power and the beauty and faith and belief and prayer and the church as a whole. And Jesus Christ, God, is alive in our lives today, but it also shows us the reality of being Christian. There are people who are being maimed and even killed just because they're Christian, and not like they're trying to be like a Billy Graham, like out there out in the pulpit preaching. They're being beaten up just because they're Christian or just because they're going to church. Romans chapter 12, verse 14, complete Jewish Bible. Bless those who persecute you. Bless them. Don't curse them. We're going to be working in Acts chapter 7 today, and we are going to be reading from the Evangelical Heritage version of the Holy Bible, and that's a Lutheran tradition Bible in case you're not familiar with it. Specifically, we're going to be focusing on the stoning of Stephen. And to give you a little bit greater context, Stephen is important because he's the first martyr, but you're also going to see another important name in here, and that's Saul. Saul becomes Paul. If we rewind to the end of chapter 6, we're going to see where Stephen gets arrested, and then all of chapter 7 up to this point is Stephen's defense, and it's extremely important. I'd highly recommend you take the time to read it. But we're going to be picking up in verse 54, and we're going to be paraphrasing a little bit for time. But basically, we see Stephen, people that are around him are furious. There's obviously a lot of tension, and Stephen gazes up into heaven, and I'm at verse 56, and he says, "Look, I see heaven open, and the Son of Man is standing at the right hand of God." Okay? Very important, because we see in verse 57, the people become extremely angry, covering their ears, screaming, and rushed at him with one purpose in mind. And obviously that purpose is to kill him. Verse 58, we see that they threw him out of the city and stoned him. We also see Saul come into the story where people were laying their cloaks at a young man's feet named Saul. While being stoned, Stephen called out, "Lord Jesus, receive my spirit." This is an extremely important verse because we see Stephen praying to Jesus Christ. Now, what we're really going to knuckle down is verse 60. Stephen has fallen to his knees and he's cried out in a loud voice, "Lord, do not hold this sin against them." After he said this, he fell asleep. The power, the internalization of the message of Jesus Christ to love your enemy. Stephen had the capacity to ask forgiveness for his killers. Well, think about that in your own life, people who've wronged you. If you're anything like me, whenever somebody's wronged you in the past, you've probably tried to get them back, or you've probably had really angry emotions about them. But Stephen is a beautiful example of what Jesus is calling us to do. Matthew chapter 5, verse 44, English Standard Version. "But I say to you, love your enemies and pray for those who persecute you." The value of intercessory prayer is usually not given its full credit. There is great power in prayer, and whenever we go to the Lord on our knees, asking for Him to protect or help or share the word with others, there is power in that. We can also get involved with different organizations like ICommitToPray.com that will give us information about what's going on or tell us how we can help in a greater sense. Another good thing to do is to spread the Christian message. That way, hopefully people will find kindness in their hearts. Ask yourself these two questions and then comment down below. How would you explain to someone why we should love our enemies? What would you do if you saw another Christian being persecuted? Do you want to learn more about what's going on in the Christian world or study the Bible more deeply? Then check out this next video.